Okay, welcome back everyone. This is the Delta Workbook. It's Mr. Australia here, and we're on lesson 3. Today we're going to be calculating percentages of amounts and using this to increase or decrease amounts by percentages. If you haven't done so already, just pause the video now and have a go at the do it now questions. Okay, number 1, we're factorising, and the highest common factor from all parts of this expression, 10x plus 15, is going to be 5. So that's what we take outside our bracket. Next, 5 multiplied by what gives me 10? 5 multiplied by 2. So 5 multiplied by 2x will give me 10x. Then 5 multiplied by what will give me positive 15? It's going to be positive 3. And we close brackets, and you can check that by expanding your brackets out. 5 times 2x, 10x. 5 times positive 3, positive 15. So we know we've correctly factorised the expression. Okay, next we've got x to the power of 3 multiplied by x to the power of 3. We have the same base, x and x. We're multiplying. That means we need to add the powers together. We've got a power of 3 and a power of 3. We can add those powers together. We will get x to the power of 6. Next, we've got 0.35 multiplied by 0.22. So we're going to take our decimal points out and make a note of them. From 35 to 0.35, we've taken out 2, and from 22 to 0.22, we've taken out another 2. That means altogether, I've taken out 4 decimal places that will need to be put back in to my final answer. We're now ready to begin multiplying. 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1. 3 2s are 6, add the 1, 7. Next, 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1 again. 3 times 2 is 6, add the 1, 7 again. We now need to add. 0 adds 0, 0, 7 adds 0, 7, 0 adds 7, 7. We now need to put those 4 decimal places back in. We imagine the decimal point normally starts at the end of the number. And so we've gone 1, 2, 3, 4. So our decimal point will have to go here, and we need to add 0 in the remaining spaces. So the final answer there is 0.077. You don't need to include that final 0 at the end because it's after the decimal point, and we can exclude the zeros on the end of the number. So it's 0.077, your final answer there. Okay, next we're adding 1/3 and 2/5. Whenever we're adding fractions, we've got 1/3 there, 2/5. We first need to find our common denominator, and we do that by multiplying our denominators together. 3 times 5, our common denominator will be 15. Next thing I need to do is think, how did I get from 3 to my common denominator of 15? I multiplied by the denominator of the other, 5. I need to do the same with my numerator to keep my fraction equivalent. 1 times 5 will give us 5. Next, how did I get from 5 to 15? I multiplied by 3. So I'm going to do the same with my numerator here. 2 times 3 gives you 6. We're now ready to add. Our denominator will stay the same. We just need to add our numerators. 5 add 6 gives you 11. Oh, so your final answer there, is 11/15. Okay, next we've got a sequence here, 10, 14, 18, 22. We've been asked to find the nth term, the general rule for this sequence. So I'm just going to write it out to give myself a bit more space. 14, 18, 22. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is work out the common difference. What is happening in this sequence? We're adding 4 each time. We're adding 4. Because we're adding 4 each time, that means we've got a form of the 4 times table here. So I'm going to write that beneath. 4, 8, 12, 16. So we've actually found the first part of our nth term. Because we've got a form of the 4 times table, that means our nth term will start with 4n. I now need to work backwards. How do I get from the terms in the 4 times table to the actual terms in my sequence? Well, from 4 to 10, I'm adding 6. Does that work here? Yes, it does. It works from all of the terms in my sequence. So I found the second part of my nth term there. It's going to be plus 6. Okay, next. Now we're doing 60 divided by 0.5. There's a couple of different ways you could do this. When we're dividing by decimal numbers, one way of approaching this is to multiply all of your terms here until you've got rid of the decimals. How do I get rid of the decimal in 0.5? I need to multiply that by 10. That would give me 5. I then need to make sure I multiply the other part, my equation here, by 10 as well. That's one way we could do it, 600 divided by 5. Another way you could do it would be to think about 0.5 as a fraction. So we could have, I'll just do it above so we've got a bit more space. That would be the same as 60 divided by a half. Dividing by a half, after you keep, change, flip, is going to be the same as multiplying by 2. So that will be 120, and it's going to be 120 here. Either method would get you the correct answer. It's going to be 120. Okay. So, when you're finding a percentage of an amount, the key thing to remember here is that your original amount will always be 100%. So I'm going to write that here. Your original amount, whatever you've started with, that's like the whole thing, that will be your 100%. And then what you need to do is you're going to use this 100% to find the percentages that you need. I'm just going to write this down up here. So, if we start with the original 100% and we're asked to find 10%, what are we doing there? To get from your original 100 to 10%, there we are dividing by 10. From 100% to 10%, you're dividing by 10. So whatever your original amount was, if you wanted to find 10%, you need to divide that by 10. What about 1%? Now, if you already had 10% and you wanted 1%, you need to divide by 10 again. If you started with 100 and wanted to go straight away to 1%, there you divided by 100. Okay. There's some other key percentages you could find now. I'm just going to remove this 1% quickly. Imagine you're at 10% and you now wanted 20%. You need to think, how have you got from 10% to 20%? You've multiplied it by 2. So whatever your amount was equal to, let's say if 10% was equivalent to, let's pick number 40, and you were asked what 20% was, the new amount would be 80, because from 10% to 20%, you've multiplied by 2, so you'd need to do the same with your amounts and multiply that by 2 as well. Okay. I'm going to show you some other key percentages now. And these are all a non-calculator method. Okay, there is a slightly different method if you're allowed to use a calculator, but for these questions today, they will be non-calculator. Right, some other key percentages you might be asked to find is 50%. That's the same as a half. If you've got half off, or if you've got 50%, from 100% to 50%, you've divided that by 2. So you need to do the same with your amount. Let's imagine you had 25%. Now from 100% to 25%, you've divided by 4, or you could go from 50% to 25% and divide by 2 again. Okay, so you could go step by step from 100 to 50 to 25, divide by 2, divide by 2, or you could go straight from 100% to 25% by dividing by 4. Okay. And what you want to do is you want to use these key percentages, 10%, 1%, 5%, to make up the percentage that you've been asked for. Let's imagine you were asked to find 17% without a calculator. You need to split that 17% up into fives, tens, and ones. How could we make 17%? Well, we could start by getting 10% by dividing the amount by 10. We could then find a 5% by halving that amount. We could find what 1% was. You could either divide the original 100% by 100 to get to 1, or divide 10% by 10 to get to 1%. And then how do you get from 1% to 2%? You just need to multiply that by 2. And as you can see here, if I add all of these together, 10%, add 5%, add 1%, well, we add another 1%. Then all of that will actually give us the 17% that we needed. So if you just add whatever your amounts were equal to, your percentages, whatever 10% was, plus whatever 5% was, plus whatever 1% was twice, then you'll have 17%. Okay, so key things to remember: whatever your original amount is, that will be equal to 100%. You then need to try and make up the percentage that you've been asked for using tens, fives, and 1%. They will be the most helpful values to get the percentage that you're after. Let's have a go at some of the questions now. Okay, so for question 1, we must always start by writing out the original amount as equal to the percentage. So for question 1A, the first thing I'm going to do is just write my original amount. I'll do 1A here. My original amount, £800 was equal to 100%. So 100% is equal to £800. What amount have I been asked for? I've been asked for 35%. That's what I've been asked to find. So I'm now trying to get a mixture of 10%, 5%, and 1% that will give me the 35% that I need. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get 10%. How do I get from 100% to 10%? I divide by 10. So that's what I'm going to do with my amount here and divide that by 10. £800 divided by 10, that leaves me with £80. Okay, we want 30%. We want 30%. How do I get from 10% to 30%? Well, I'm going to multiply that by 3. Okay. Do this in blue. From 10% to 30%, I've multiplied by 3. So I'm going to do the same thing here. 8 multiplied by 3 gives me 24. So 80 multiplied by 3 will be 240. Right, I need 35%. I've got 30%. I now just need to work out what 5% would be, and then I can add those together. Just going to scroll down a bit so we've got some more space. Okay, now, using my amounts I've got here, 100%, 10%, and 30%. How could I get from one of these to 5% nice and easy? I'm going to go from 10%. So from 10% all the way to 5%, what have I done there? I've halved it. I've divided by 2. So I'll need to do the same thing with this amount here and divide that by 2. 8 divided by 2 gives you 4. So 80 divided by 2 will give you 40. Now I need 35%. I can get to 35% by doing 30%, add 5%. And I now just need to do the same thing with my amounts. £240 is 30%, £40 is 5%. So the final step would just be to add those together. Okay, 30% plus 5% gives me 35%. And so I need to do the same with my amounts. I had 240 add 40, and that gives me my final answer. 35% is 280. 280. Okay, right, I'm just going to write that in there. We had question 1A. That was £280. That was 1A. Okay. Right. So the key thing there, you must start with 100%. That will be equal to your original amount. And then through multiplying and dividing, you will need to find, and some adding, you will need to find the percentage that you need. Okay, so we had 1A there, that was £280. Okay, let's have a look at B next. B. Do this in red. So B. What was our original amount this time? This time our original amount was 160 grams. It's important to include our units as well. So we had 100% was equal to 160 grams. Okay, I need 6%, so I'm going to go straight away. Let's try 10%. You'll see why in just a moment. So 10%, I'm going to divide 100 by 10 to get to 10, so I need to do the same with my amount. It's going to be 16. I'm now going to find what 5% is. How do I get from 10% to 5%? I've divided it by 2. So I'm going to do the same with my amount. Divide that by 2. That gives me 8 grams. I needed 6 grams. How can I make 6? Well, 5 plus 1 will give me 6. So I now just need to find whatever 1% is. And I can do that by using 10%. How did we get from 10% to 1%? We divided by 10. It's going to need to do the same thing here with our amount. 16 grams divided by 10 will give me 1.6 grams. Okay, so how do I get that 6%? I get 6% by adding 5% and 1%. So I need to do the same thing with their values. 5% was 8 grams, 1% was 1.6 grams. So 8 grams add 1.6 grams gives you 9.6 grams. Okay, that was B. It's 1.6 grams. Okay, next one. Okay, we're now having a look at part C. I'm going to keep that 100% up there because we always start with our original amount is equal to 100%. And this time we're trying to find 23%. So have a think, how can you make up this 23% that we need out of 10s, 5s and 1s? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find out what 10% was. So 100% the original, 330 centimetres. And to get from 100% to 10%, I divide by 10. So that's going to be 33 centimetres. Okay, I'm going to need a 1% as well and a 20%. So let's go to 1% first. I'll make it a bit clearer. From 10% to 1%, I've divided by 10 again. So I need to do the same thing with my amount. 33 divided by 10 gives me 3.3. Okay, I'm going to need a 3%, so let's find that now. How did we get from 3% to 1%? There I've multiplied by 3. I'll just show you that. 1% to 3%, we multiplied by 3. So we'll do the same thing here. 3 times 3 gives you 3. 0.3 times 3, sorry, 3 times 3 gives you 9. 0.3 times 3 gives you 0.9. So we're going to have 9.9. I now need to find what 20% was. And I can use my value for 10% to help me there. How do I get from 10% to 20%? I just multiplied by 2. Okay, so I need to do the same with my amount there. 33 multiplied by 2 gives me 66. Okay, what I need to do now is add my 20% with my 3% to get the 23% that I need. And so I'll now need to do the same with the amounts. 20%, that was 66. 3%, that was 9.9. So I now need to add those together and I get 75.9. So that's 75.9, and all of my units were in centimetres, so they'll be in units. So they'll be in centimetres for my final answer as well. Okay, so that was C, and we had 75.9 centimetres. Okay, next, we're on part D. This time we're finding 52% of 910 metres. So we're now doing part D. Right then, so my original amount, that was 910 metres. I'm trying to find 52%, so 50% would be a useful one to find. How do I get from 100 to 50? I divide by 2, so I need to do the same thing with my amount as well. That's going to be 455 metres. I then need that 2%, so I could find 1% nice and easy, just divide the original by 100, so I'll need 2 decimal places, 9.1 metres. And then how do you get from 1% to 2%? You just multiply by 2. So that's going to be 18.2. Okay. Right then, how did I get 52%? I added my 50% with my 2%. So I need to do the same with my amounts now. 455, add 18.2. What are we going to get there? We'll get 473.2. All of our units were in meters, so our final answer will be meters as well. So that was D. D was 473.2 meters. Okay then. Moving on to the next question now. This time we've been asked to find 61% of 1,400. We don't have any units here in this question, therefore we won't need any units in our answer. We're now doing part E. Okay, so 61, that's what I'm trying to get. Well, it might be useful to find what 10% is in this question. So my original amount here was 1,400. So 10%, we'll need to divide that by 10. Okay, I need a 60. How do I get from 10% to 60%? I multiply by 6. So I'll do the same thing with my amount as well, multiply that by 6. 10 times 6, 60. 4 times 6, 24. Add those together and you get 84. Right, I need 1% now. How do you get from 10% to 1%? Divide that by 10. So I divide 140 by 10 as well. It'd be 140. So there, just divided by 10. And I've done the same here. Okay. Right, final thing is add them together. To make 61%, you've got a 60% and a 1%. So I need to do the same with my amounts, 84 and 14. Here, 84 plus 14. Oh, silly me, look, I've only put 84, I've forgotten the 0 there. 140 multiplied by 6 is going to give you 840, not just 84. So be very careful there. If you're using a mental method here and you've taken zeros out of your calculation, you must remember to put those back in. Otherwise, you could have made a very silly mistake like I've done there. So here we've got 840, okay, add 14, and that will give us 854. You don't have any units in your question, so this will be your final answer, 854. Now, also, I've noticed in the solutions in your workbook, for some reason, they've made a silly mistake as well. And it's 85.4, I believe they put in your workbook. The correct answer is this, 854. Okay, so that was question E. We're now on question F. 7% of 640 GB. GB, they are gigabytes. Okay, so you've got kilobytes, 1,000 of them, then you've got your megabyte, 1,000 of them, then you've got your gigabyte. Okay, let's go. So we've got 7% of 640, so I write out my original amount as equal to 100% gigabytes. I need 7%, so this time I'm going to go straight away to 1% by dividing that by 100. Yeah, from 100% to 1%, we divided by 100. So I need to do the same with my amount. And that's going to now be 6.4 gigabytes. Okay, a couple of different ways you could do this. You could have gone to 10% and 5% and then added 5% and 2%. I'm just going to go straight away to 7%. How did I get from 1% to 7%? Multiplied by 7. So I now need to do 6.4 multiplied by 7. Taken out one decimal place here, so I must put one decimal place back in when I finish that calculation. 4 sevens, 28, carry the 2. 6 sevens, 42, add the 2, 44. I put that one decimal place back in. And 7% is 44.8 gigabytes, GB. Okay. That was question F that we were on there. And the final answer there, 44.8 gigabytes, GB. Okay, final part of question 1. This time we're finding 45% of 350 grams. So there's a 5%, and there's going to be lots of 10%. So the first thing I'm going to do is go straight to my 10%. Okay, this is now question G. Okay, so from 100 to 10%, we divided by 10. A 5%, from 10% to 5%, I divide by 2. So I'll do the same thing with 35. That'll be 17.5. And then I'm going to need a 40% as well. So from 10% to 40%, we multiplied by 4. So you need to do the same with the amount, 35 multiplied by 4 as well. So there, 40%, what's that going to give us? Well, 35 times 2 gives us 70. Double that again, and you're going to get 140. Okay then, we needed 45%. So the final step would be to add our 40% value to our 5% value, and we'd get 157.5 grams. Our units were in grams initially, so our units will be in grams for our final answer. So that was G, 157.5 grams. Okay, so that was all of question 1. We're now going to move on to question 2. 35% more. Okay, so now what we're doing for question 2 and for question 3 is we are increasing or decreasing amounts by percentages. If you think about 100% as being your original amount, if you're increasing that, you will need to add on whatever percentage you have found to be original. For example, if we just keep this calculation up here now, if I was asked to increase by 45%, then that would give me 100% plus 45%, 145%. So you need to do the same with your values. You need to take the original 350 and then add on 45%. If it was decreased though, then you'd need to take your original and subtract the 45%. Okay. Right, let's have a go at these then. Question number 2. Question number 2 has told us that a standard bag of flour contains 600 grams. So your standard, that's going to be your original amount, your 100%. And this time we're told it's 600 grams. What I need to find is 35%. Okay, so I'm going to find out what 10% is by dividing by 10. Find out what 5% is by dividing that new amount, 10%, by 2. And then 30%, a couple of different ways you could get 30%. You could either take your 5% value, multiply that by 6, or your 10% value and multiply that by 3. Either way, you get 180. So your 35%, you now need to add together your 5%, 30 grams. I'll show you, so 35% is 30% plus 5%. So that's going to be 180 plus 30, 210 grams. But we needed to know how much is in the special edition bag. The special edition bag is not just this 35%, it's the whole original 100% plus this extra bit, 35%. So really what we're actually finding is 135%. Okay. Our 100% was 600 grams. Our 35% was 210 grams. So our 135%, with those added together, 810 grams. So that will be your final answer there. 810 grams. You've got to include those units as well. Okay, this is the key. How much is in the special edition bag? 35% larger ones. Okay, that was question 2. And we're now going to have a look at question 3. Final question here. So Richard owns a coffee shop. In February, 4,500 hot chocolates were sold. But the number of hot chocolates sold in March was 3% less. So it's slightly different now. We would still put the original amount as equal to 100%. But once we've found that 3%, we're going to do something slightly different because it's now 3% less than the original. Okay. So that's our month of February. We had 4,500, but we've sold 3% less. So we need to work out, first of all, how much 3% is. From 100% to 1% divided by 100. So we do the same with our amount. From 1% to 3%, I've multiplied by 3. So I need to do the same with 45. 45 multiplied by 3, that's going to give us 135. Remember, if you're not confident, just use a written method. But this time, we've got 3% less. So 100%, 3% less of that, you're actually taking it away. So what we've actually found here is 97%. Okay. And to find 97%, we took the original amount, 100%, 4,500, and we subtracted 3%, 135. And that will give us 4,365. Again, you can use a written method if you're not confident there. So that was 4, 3, 6, 5 there. How many hot chocolates are sold in March? They've asked you about hot chocolates specifically, so you just put the number 4,365. That's how many hot chocolates were sold in March. Okay, so this lesson we were doing percentage of an amount and using that to increase and decrease amounts by percentages. There are lots of different Hegarty tasks on this, 84, 85, 86 and 88. The last few tasks will be working on your percentage increases and decreases. And if you'd like further challenge or a bit more of an extension, then have a look at the Core Bit Maths videos. They'll be on, well, it'll be activity 234 and 238. Each one of those will have a video, a textbook exercise, and some practice questions to have a go at. If you want to extend yourself further, have a look through those, and I'll see you in the next lesson.